and we'll give that. There we go. Put that back and give people a chance to
come in.
In the room.
Yes. So we'll wait a few minutes, let
Or a few
people
moments.
come in. Yeah.
Sure.
Let people come in, and YouTube have to play their videos.
Yeah, they put an ad at the front.
Of course they do.
Yeah, of course. It slows everything down just a little bit as we get into it. And today we have, of course, Daniel. We have Daniel from Arkham Comics Las Vegas edition.
Yes.
The Sin City edition. And Daniel, somebody that this Kane Union. I knew you were going to show up. How you doing?
Union, how are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to speak to you and see your viewers, and you have a great channel. I love what you do, and I was honored that you asked me to be a part of a live show.
Well, we appreciate it. And of course, for those of you who don't realize, a couple of weeks back we tried to have Daniel on, and there was a technical problem. Got it. Obviously, we've got it sorted out now.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go again.
As you can see on the bottom of the page, I put his Facebook and YouTube. Now, I did not put your Instagram because it had your name on there. I didn't know if you wanted. Okay. So he is on Instagram, and I'll put that on because it's in his name, Daniel LaSalle.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, but those are the places you can find him.
So
YouTube is the one I do the most stuff on. So YouTube is the strongest platform to watch the things that I do.
Yeah, and he does a lot of unboxings. He talks comics. He had one. I wish you would go deeper into it, but you were before the CGC grading guide came out. You showed how to grade based on the Overstreet guide.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very useful. Another big thing I got from Daniel was how to bag and board, because he uses the oversized bags and the oversized boards and explained that. So he's a wealth of information when it comes to comic books, storing the comic books, how to treat it, and everything like that. So visit his YouTube. He used to put out things weekly, your weekly pickups, but
there's a lot of stuff has gone on the last few weeks, so I've been able to do one. I was getting ready for a show last weekend, but I'm hoping this week I can get back into my groove. Just sometimes life, like I said, sometimes life gets in the way and you can't do the things you want to do.
Sure.
Do the things that you need to do.
Do you have an actual store, or you just primarily do shows?
I don't sell online. I don't sell online. I don't have a shop. My work does not give me the flexibility to do that. So I do small local shows. I'm real negative on the big shows now. I mean, we have Amazing Con coming at the end of the month, but they're charging $1,500-$1,600 for a table. And,
wow.
I don't want to sell $1,600 worth of product because I don't bring big keys. I'm not selling Daredevil #1s and X-Men #1s where I can get, multiple thousands of dollars for a single book that'll pay for everything. I got to sell a bunch of other stuff. I specialize in some Golden Age, very limited on grading books that I get rid of. And then I have a lot of the $50 and below books that does very well. So a small show will cost me $50 and you can make, decent money doing that. So I kind of stick to that right now.
And even from that perspective, I wonder about that sometimes. Okay, you're selling huge high dollar books. Some of these dealers, how much are they really coming away with if they happen to spend $1,500 on a table plus other expenses?
If you talk about big dealers, if you talk like Metropolis or a Red Hood, that we have locally here, a friend of mine who does all the major shows. He does every show in the country, but he has books that are $25,000.
Okay,
and you sell a $25,000 book, you're gonna make your money, and so you're not worried about because if you travel out of the city, as you guys go to a lot of shows. If I have a big show I'm doing, I have to, rent a moving truck to get the product to the location where I'm going. Even if I'm just doing the West Coast stuff, I got to bring a couple people to help because you can't do a big show by yourself as much as you'd like to think so. So you got to pay for their hotel rooms. You got to feed them, so there becomes the $1,500 now in a blink of an eye becomes $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
So is it worth to sell, all your books and then walk away with a $1,500, $2,000 extra after selling everything. I don't think so. So that's why I don't do it.
Mm.
There's other ways. There's other ways to make money. I do 2 yard sales a year. They call it the Arkham Garage, where I set up in the garage, and you do one in the first 6 months and one in the second 6 months. Because here in Las Vegas, you're only allowed to do 2 garage sales a year.
Are you serious?
You're allowed to do a year, and to the point that they will physically go to your house and tell you cannot do another yard sale.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
That's
so
nuts.
I thought Illinois.
you're allowed 2 a year, two free weeks a year. So.
Talk about overreach.
Well, this is Las Vegas. Remember, Las Vegas doesn't have a state tax, so they make their money on their licensing for businesses or Ubers or things like that, and they'll make you buy a business license to do that here in Nevada. So
Hmm.
you just can't get in your car and Uber. They're going to charge you a business license for it, so they'll find ways to make their money.
That's great.
Well, it's kind of crazy, but that's the society that we're living in.
So how long have you been doing that? How long have you been doing dealing to feed your collection?
It's one of those things where I used to do baseball cards real heavy in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was a kid, I collected everything. I collected comic books, baseball cards, non-sports cards, just things like whatever was at the 7-Eleven. That's what I was buying. It didn't matter what it was. And so I started doing shows because baseball card boom in the 80s got really big, and you were able to make so much money in the 80s, 90s. Being in high school, mid 80s, and just you can go do a little local show, pay $50 or $25 for a table, and you're walking out with $3,000, on a Friday night. So I did the one show in San Diego they had every year. It's called the Scottish Rite Show. It was the first Friday of the month, every month, and it was like that for 30 years.
Mm.
So every Friday, you just go to the Scottish Rite, and every collector would go there, and you could just make a killing on just anything. Throw it on the table. In the 80s, people were buying anything in the 80s. Just like the big purchasing of comic books in the late 80s, early 90s with the holograms and when Valiant and Image came out, and everybody wanted
all
those.
The novelty covers, yeah.
Yeah, all the dumb covers, and that's when I was buying a heavy dose of my vintage books, because shops at that time, if you've collected that long, shops couldn't get rid of those books. They couldn't sell them. So you could buy a long box of books back then, $50, $60, because all their money was going into the new stuff. So they didn't care about the older stuff. People wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, and the older stuff, especially finding a halfway decent condition or grade, if you will, is a lot harder to find than people would realize. And it's a lot harder because people there's some premium books, huge books out there that people really want, like Hulk 181 and ASM 300, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of those books out there.
There's a ton of those books out there, and people don't realize that. They think that, I like that Super Magician book I showed you before we went live.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in the pop report. Like I tell people, if you want a Werewolf by Night 32, you want a, ASM 300, like you mentioned, even Daredevil 1, X-Men 1, Avengers 1, you go to conventions, and every big dealer's got 2, 3, 4 of them in their booth.
Yeah.
Different grade points. You're looking for some of that pre-code horror, a lot of that old EC stuff. Just good luck finding it. Not a lot of people have that, especially some of the more famous covers. There's the famous Christmas cover where the lady's standing in front of the casket and the husband has the axe behind her. You can't find those in shows because those sell super, super quick. That's a real hard book to find. So the one I showed you with the guy crawling in the back seat where the girl is, the romance book.
Yeah,
I've only seen 2 of those copies, since the 80s. You don't find them because they're rare. That's rare because those are the ones that were burned. Those are the ones that were destroyed by, the church groups and stuff in the early 50s that ultimately became the Comics Code.
Yeah,
and they destroyed it. Thousands and thousands of books were just burned and destroyed. That's why they're so hard to find.
Yeah, and I've talked about that before. The irony of that is, this is a generation that just came out of a war, fighting a system that burned books.
Yeah,
and what do?
they burn books.
They burn books.
They burn books, but EC knew that. The writers and the artists at EC knew it was going to cause a big uproar, and every time they would show a book, you know, you can't buy this book because it's a decapitation cover or it's a hanging cover. Those are the ones that people were going to the little stands and newsstands where you bought your books and say, hey, do you have this? Do you have this book? I want this book. So whatever, what's the old saying? There's no such thing as bad press. You can say all the negative things you want about things and people are going to go to it. You can talk about a horrible movie. When the movie Passion of the Christ came out, everybody was talking bad about that movie, about how violent it was, and the lines were around the block to see it. It made tons of money because there is a set of people that are drawn to that. They want to see what, Terrifier is the big movie now, the clown movie, Art the Clown. So I'm a huge horror fan. My tattoos are, all horror themed, but one of the most violent movies I ever saw, and it made a ton of money for an independent film because of that. So that's always going to be a draw to people. What some people don't want, other people do. That's all they want.
So how long have you been collecting comics for yourself then?
I bought my first comic book in 1974. I'm talking, I lived in San Diego. I would get my $1 or $2 on a Saturday. Not, my mom didn't, she was a single mother, didn't have a lot, did the best she could. And so I would get my $2. But back then, comic books were a quarter, Slurpees were a quarter, baseball cards or non-sport cards were 10 cents a pack.
Sure.
$2 would go a long way. So I would go down there and, I also learned, at that time that, my mother was an attractive woman, when she was younger. And, she would, 70s, she was dating. And I learned to manipulate, her boyfriend that would come over and he would, had money and he'd always stack of comic books, stack of cards, something to, keep the kid happy. And so that's what I did. Someone wants to see a band comic in my collection.
Yeah.
Let's see.
A Sodi book, I guess.
It's the romance book, I think, is going to be the one that, as I look here, this is a band book. This was one of the band books that they brought out. Try to get right there. This is Romance Comics from 1954. It was because of the suggestive cover. This is a super low-grade book, but you cannot find this book. And I'll bring it closer so you can kind of see, what's being said on that book. And it's even listed in the price guide as a suggestive cover. This is one that I'll never get rid of, and you still pay a good amount of money for it. You can't find these in any type of condition, but you can find that book. And then, of course, you have the Vault of Horrors. This one's not a huge. I got to get used to this camera to. You got the Vault of Horrors, the old EC books. That's a pretty code book. There's just a lot of different things that you can have as it relates to, banned books or things that people want. You go to shows now, EC, everybody's looking for EC, everybody's looking for 40s bondage covers, 40 romance, what they call the good girl covers.
Yeah.
And the ones I like I do like we talked about with the Jungle Comics, the bondage covers. And then I like what they call the good girl covers. You have, the girls that are dressed up real nice, and it's always the damsel in distress. It's the gangster, it's the true crime books, the gangster with the damsel in distress and the hero. Those sell really, really well. I mean, I like those, but I like those for personal collections. I sell very few Golden Age books because I just don't want to. They're too hard to get, and I just love them. I can sit here and just look at pre-code books and just be happy as a clam.
Sure. So, when you set up, what do you put on your wall to draw people's eye?
I'll bring a lot of 60s, 70s. Like this last show I did, I had like the first mention of Nick Fury as Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I had that one. Had second appearance of what is it? I can't think now. It was a second appearance of a Spider-Man villain that people looked at, but it's an expensive book. That's a heavy book, and it didn't sell, but I had a lot of people looking at it because it's an upper grade book. It's a 758, which is unheard of for that book, which I love. And I'll bring out like some tales of suspense. I'll throw some 70s horror because that for me sells really well. People love that 70s horror, and to me that's the true golden age of the horror genre. Is the 70s, the mid 70s, because you had Bernie Wrightson, you had Nick Cardy, you had Neil Adams. They all worked on those books, and If you look at Nick Cardy's artwork, you look at Neil Adams' artwork, they're real hard to distinguish. They're almost identical. Bernie Wrightson, to me, is the master. Nobody touches Bernie Wrightson. Those
Yeah,
stories,
also because of the SOTY, the seduction of the innocent, that's where you pick up after that stuff was shut down after the golden age, when you couldn't when you couldn't even use the word like weird in a comic.
Yeah, there was so much stuff.
So when you go to horror in the 70s, that's where it flashes back up again.
It comes up a little bit more at that time. That's what I liked about it, because after the pre-code stuff, the trials in the early 50s for that, comic books had to be real careful. They couldn't show decapitation covers. They couldn't show people hanging. They, all the things that EC did, they got people to buy stuff. So a lot of it was toned down. In the 70s, they started stretching it out a little bit more. They started, what can we get away with under the code, and do that. So he asked a question: are these stories still told? Or are they super diluted? Well, in my opinion, things like Detective Comics and the modern day comic books, even though I buy stuff to show what came out for the week, I don't think that I think the storylines are really bad. I think if you want really, really good storylines, you need to go to independent. I don't think the mainstream Marvel, DC, Image, for the most part, they're not coming out with really good storylines. They come out with the same type of storylines. They're putting the same characters. I mean, there was a time last month where there was 71 Batman stories going on.
Wow.
Detective Batman, Gotham City.
That doesn't make sense.
Harley Quinn and Joker. They kind of keep the same little things. Remember, back in the day, there were no variant covers when I was collecting in the 70s. You had Batman, you had Detective. Those were your two Batman stories. Then you had Joker, who had a little bit in there, but he had a small, mini series that they did. And so it's just one of those things where I think it's become too diluted, and that's hurt the industry. The fact that they're not coming out with really good storylines. Some of my favorite storylines on the independents the last few years, Something's Killing the Children, I think, is a really good storyline. There was one story called She Bites, about a little girl vampire who has a babysitter because she can't go out at night because she's so young, everybody stops her. That was a really good storyline. I really like that. I don't know if you guys have read that one. She Bites.
Well, I've heard you talk about it. I think that's one that you suggested. I know the children you suggest several times.
I did. That's a title, because if I see a title, I think I have. They just came out with the graphic novel here. This is the She Bites. Sorry, I'm trying to get used to this camera. This is the little girl vampire right here, and that's her babysitter right there. This is her babysitter on the far, I guess, looking at the screen. But it's just, the storyline is just so good, because character development's really good. But again, they stopped doing that book right now. They haven't announced a new release on it. They came out with the first few issues, and they came out with a small trade. And then I'm still waiting to see what the other stuff is. There was, of course, a book that came out based off of an Iranian movie called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, about a vampire who kind of kills bad people. Doesn't just hunt anybody. She kills bad people. And the storyline was really good. The book is really good. The movie was good. But that's another one that I liked. It was just a real small genre. But, to me, if you tell a good story, people will come. If you came out with we haven't seen, when was the last time we had a Killing Joke type storyline, or a Long Halloween?
Yeah.
When was the last time we really had that? I mean, Donny Cates had a really nice run with Immortal Hulk, and he did some stuff there, but then that got oversaturated because now Donny Cates does a bunch of books. Instead of just concentrating on a good storyline, they just want to jump so much. These big companies, Marvel, DC, they're just all about the money now. It's just a huge money grab. And to me, that hurts. And it takes away from what comic book collecting should be. If you can make money on it, fantastic. But the enjoyment should be in the book. The enjoyment should be in the reading.
And that you kind of answered the question, because I was going to ask you what did you think the direction of the comic book industry is going? Because we see like a downward spiral, it seems like. There's comic books.
There is a downward spiral, and you can see that in comic shops. I've talked to all the people that I know here. I have a really good relationship with all the comic book shops here in town. They're all friends, and they're honest with me on stuff like that. You see a lot of shops that are, I think, some of the things that hurt the industry, multiple covers. I don't need 15 covers of a book. You'll see some of these, the Harley Quinn book came out, had like 12 covers. I don't need 12 covers. I need a cover. And I need a good story. Don't worry about how many covers you're going to have. Worry about how good the story is going to be, because it's the story that's going to bring me back. Now, I buy books based off of cover, but I'm real particular about that. It's got to be a really good cover. But if the story's no good, I'm not going to buy it. The Batman storylines have been so bad, I stopped buying Batman. I've been buying Batman since the 70s religiously. But if the story's bad, it takes away my interest. But I think the thing that hurt most, I think the reason you're seeing such a huge downturn now is because speculators are losing a lot of money. They speculate on a ton of books. I mean, if you don't believe it, they have that, what's that comic book app that
Spider Boy?
Comic Tom loves? It's Key Collector.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Comic Tom talks about all the time, which I think he's another one. He's making money off of this. The stuff that they recommend or stuff that he makes money off of. He has a shop. He has a business. Of course, he's going to tell you, this book is what you want to get because he's got 600 copies of it back there. But speculation, they would go in, and a lot of the shops in town now used to be able to go and buy 2-3 copies of a book if you wanted to. Now it's 1 copy of a book unless you pre-order it, because so many people are going in there buying 10, 15 copies of first appearance of Maude, Batman's maid or whatever, and so they would just buy tons of copies and then realize that the book isn't worth anything. So then they dump them. And that's why you see a saturated market on things, which is now hurting shops. Some shops are closing. Because it's hard for a small shop. If you have a small business and you look at your diamond previews and you have 25 Batman storylines and you have 4 covers per book, it's 100 books. You still got to buy those books, and the bad thing is people who have pull boxes that, the book doesn't stay hot anymore, so they're not going to pick them up. I have shops here that have, 6,000 books that haven't been picked up that they've already paid for. That's money that comes out of their pocket. And that because you have a person who's got, a long box or a short box full of books and they never pick them up. They just never go back to the shop. Well, that's $450 of money that came out of my pocket that I have to try to recoup, and the book ain't selling. It's hard to keep your head afloat, and that's what hurts. And see, it was this downward spiral of the comic industry can be attributed to the pushing of agendas and a lack of interesting. Well, I said the interesting story stuff, but they do have a lot of, agendas that they're trying to push. Which in World War II, I remember speaking to a comic book artist back then, and it was, when World War II started, comic book companies were contacted by Congress and said, "Can you make comic books that puts Germans and Japanese in a bad light, for the war effort, to get people pumped up?" And if you look at a lot of those books in that time frame, the Germans are always haunting women and children. The evil look, the fangs, almost a vampire type look with the swastikas and everything. And the Japanese soldiers were made to look almost mongoloidish, real ugly, real big teeth, and that was just the way it was done, which is a horrible thing. But at that time frame, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to get the United States to hate those countries because we were in war with that. And like people sit there and say, not true. It is true. Go back and look at those books. Bring up Google Golden Age pre-Code War books, and look at the Germans and look at the Japanese. They did them in a really, really horrible light, but that it's just kind of hard, to say things like that. But that right now they're pushing the trans community agenda with things, the rainbow books and the rainbow cover books and stuff like that. And I understand that, and that's okay, but it becomes too much sometimes. I mean, how many Nightwing books have you seen where now, Nightwing has his shirt off, he's in the gym, he's sweaty, his shirt's off. It's you laugh, but it's true. They're pinpointing one general thing. Now, Harley Quinn now has an open relationship with Poison Ivy. Covers where they're holding hands and they're kissing and they're hugging, and so I don't need all that in my comic books. I just need Batman to bust heads, and I need the Joker to be mean and nasty like he's supposed to, and I'm happy with that. I stay away from political aspects of it because once you get that aspect involved, it kind of takes away from the enjoyment because people get real emotional when it comes to, you know, their beliefs and things like that.
Sure.
A lot of shops don't order a lot of shelf copies anymore. Yeah.
And that's something that I've heard from a lot of dealers at shows too when we talk to them, and many of them have indicated that they either already have or are considering just not even ordering new books anymore and just sticking with older, like pre-2000 copy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, same thing here in Las Vegas. I have a shop I go to here. The owner's a great guy, and he used to order tons of stuff, but now with the fact that a lot of things aren't selling and the purchasing has gone back with that, is they're not going to order the 10 copies. He'll look at the 10 covers. He's going to look at it and say, hey, I like cover A, C, and D. I think those are going to be the hot sellers. And he'll buy a couple of extra copies, but they're not buying 10 and 15 copies for the show. They're getting their box pull covers. Okay, at my box pulls are 12 copies. I'll order 3 additional for the shelf. And that's it. Because he has to turn over inventory to continue to pay his bills. You can't turn over inventory if you're buying 10 covers and only 3 covers sell, and you got 7 covers sitting on there, and now you're talking 25, 30 books that are just selling, even if you're just buying a couple of covers. You know, so that you know, that's just the area that we're in right now, and that's the times that we're living in. I mean, I used to buy off a little spinner rack at a 7-Eleven, walk in, spin the rack, see a cool cover, because I try to tell people, you know, when I was buying when I was 8 and 9 years old, I wasn't going in there saying, "Ooh, look, it's the new Ditko." I'd be like, "Ooh, look, it's Iron Man is melting somebody," you know, or, you know, Batman is, you know, looking real menacing, or look at the monster, look at the war cover. I love the war covers. Ooh, look at that war cover. That's how I would buy my books. It's not until later you get on, you realize, you know, oh, Bernie Wrightson, you know, I enjoy his books. You have, you know, Adams, you have Steranko, you have Kirby, you have Ditko. You mentioned those names, and it's like everything's going to be good that they do.
Yeah.
For the most part, early Frank Miller, when the Killing, you know, early Frank Miller, the Dark Knight stuff he did, even the early, what is the name of that series he did? Sin City. The early Sin City, fantastic. I think he's just overrated now. He has a horrible signature too. Have you seen his signature? His signature is terrible. He used to have a really nice Frank Miller signature. I call it the 80s Frank Miller. Just a beautiful Frank Miller. The F looked like a 7, really clean. Now it's like just a scribble. You know,
and I bet you pay a lot for it too.
You pay a lot for it. One of my biggest arguments, and you can see videos on this. This is when Stan Lee was still alive. Now Stan Lee obviously is a legend, even though he didn't do any writing. He did the writing, he didn't do the arts, he didn't come up with characters. You know, these are the other, you know, the artists that came up with that. But as he got older, he had horrible. If you look at the signatures, you look at early Stan Lee signatures where you can see Stan Lee, and you look at the later Stan Lee signatures where it's a blob. It's just a piece of ink that just says, I think, and everything else is blobbed up because he had, you know, health conditions that didn't allow him to do the signatures. And my argument was, why would you take a high grade X-Men #1 and put a blob of ink on it just because they say it's Stan Lee? I thought that was the worst thing that happened, you know, and you're paying $100 and something for a Stan Lee signature. He signed a ton of stuff. It just doesn't become worth anything anymore. And I think people get too, you know, if you go to shows now, you see an artist where they never charge for, you know, you can get 4 or 5 signatures. They never charge for it. Now they charge for their signature. They'll give you like 1 or 2 free and then $10 a signature after the fact, because you see people that go up to them, they drop 20 books in front of them because all they're going to do is get them signed and then throw them immediately up on eBay. And they're going to make that money. And artists see that. I mean, you heard about the story in New York with Peach Momoko.
Oh, that's right.
Fight broke out over her signature. And to the point that she got up and she left and she canceled a private signing. You don't see her doing a lot of signings anymore because it upset her that much that people are actually fighting over a signature. And she was giving people free signatures. But then you had
that happened with Elvira too, and they were charging for that signature, but that was with the Funko Pops. Yeah, because that's a big thing in the pop community, and it kind of contradicts what they're always saying about there's a big stigma in the pop community that they're not ever going to lose value and all of this, but they'll go and they'll get a signature on it, even a signature that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. To help it hold the value. And it's like, but I thought you said it wasn't going to lose value. It wasn't going to lose value. She got rushed, and she had never had a crowd that big, and she panicked. So there was a big mess. I think that was New York Comic Con, actually, wasn't it?
I've met
I'm not sure.
I've met Cassandra Peterson a bunch of times, and she's super nice, and she's always generous with her time and her fans. Because, like I said, I'm a big horror person. Of course, I grew up watching, Movie Macabre with Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. At, 11:35 on a Saturday night after the news, and you'd watch a cheesy movie. She's always been open and honest about signatures and things like that. And but people like that ruin it because they're not doing it because they love it. I have signatures. I have signatures because I like the artists and I like the items. I don't flip my signatures. That Bernie Wrightson book I can get a ton of money for, but I love it because I love Bernie Wrightson. He's by far my most favorite artist ever. And I have never any intention of, selling that book no matter what, because it means a lot that someone gave that to me. And it is Bernie Wrightson. And I love Bernie Wrightson. I got to see him and speak to him just a few months before he passed away, and he was so generous with his time. I sat there for like 2 hours because nobody was coming to his table. They were like, well, "Who's this guy?" I'm like, "This is Bernie Wrightson," and they're like, "I don't know who he is." I'm like, "Really? You call yourself a comic book collector? You're gonna run over to this little guy who did a My Little Pony book? He's the greatest artist." No, this is Bernie Wrightson. That is the master. And if you don't know who Bernie Wrightson is, anybody watching the channel, just bring up Bernie Wrightson, The Hanging Girl, or Bernie Wrightson, the Frankenstein series, and look at the detail and understand that he did those in just a couple of days. There are, things he did that it would take an artist 2 months to do now, and he was doing it all by hand. And in the 70s, he was finishing cover to cover books, 15 books a month, and he never missed a deadline. That's by hand. There's no computer. You do that by hand. 15 books. You can't even get an artist to do one book now. I couldn't get it because my computer wasn't working. He's doing it by hand. I mean, come on now.
But that's the big thing now. You're seeing a lot of that in those signings, and the prices going up and up and up. And I think that that Liefeld one, Liefeld or Liefeld, I can't remember. Liefeld. Okay. Have you seen the prices on that one? I think the sketch it's like $3,000 or something.
I have a history with Mr. Liefeld. I was very outspoken about him on one of my channels early in my career about try to draw feet, like that, and because the Deadpool is the ugliest. I mean, everybody knows about that. Or that Captain America, where the chest is the size of a hot air balloon. And I was at a show, and I had done a video. And he said, "Hey, aren't you the guy who does YouTube videos?" And I said, "Sure." And he says, "Do you have anything else bad to say about me, huh? About the way I draw things?" I'm like, I told him, when you start learning how to draw feet, I'll stop talking about you. I'm one of those guys who, don't come at me because, he's like, well, I don't call myself an artist, so I don't have to learn how to draw feet. You call yourself an artist making a fortune of money off of, Deadpool. Learn to draw them right. I mean, the foot's this skinny. I mean, it's a little tiny skinny foot. And he's gotten better. But I heard now because, the new stunts he's doing, the feet look really good. But there's a rumor out there that he doesn't do the feet. He's got someone else who does the lower part of the legs to do the feet.
Well, I remember
he's an ass to his fans. I mean, he just, he's very, I did Deadpool. Sure you did. Okay, you came up with a great character that people love. Doesn't mean you can be a douchebag. Doesn't mean you can charge $100 for a signature.
Well, he used to draw people in the X-Force, and they were always standing in a puff of smoke.
Sure.
Like, where's all this dust coming from? I always imagined that X-Force had Pigpen as one of its members.
Yeah, and so there it is. Wow. That's why all the dust is there. Yeah, artists do that when they try to cover other things up, and then you get somebody like, some of the other artists that'll do, sketches and stuff for you if you pay for it, and I'm not going to pay big money for a sketch, so.
But that's a huge thing now, and I always had an issue with it because when I used to do Great Eastern conventions back in the early '90s, signatures were just free. Even McFarlane, even Liefeld, all of them, Sam Keith, all of them, they were free at the show.
In 1976, I went to my first San Diego Comic-Con, and it was at the Old Town and Country Hotel in Mission Valley. And I remember you had Stranko and Wrightson and Neil Adams. I didn't know who they were, but I would go to the tables and get signatures, and they would used to I had a little autograph book, which I still have, a little autograph book where I would, can you sign this for me? And, Neil Adams would sign his name, Neil Adams, and draw a little headshot of something. There you go. you know, and Stranko and Ditko, they all do the same thing. Bernie Wrightson, same thing. He did a little Swamp Thing face, on it, and it's not huge, this big, but it's an original Bernie Wrightson. It's an original Neil Adams. It's an original Steranko, and you can't get that stuff anymore. And because now, like you said, everything is about money, and the reason it's about money is because these artists put their life and their heart into these products that they're developing, and then they're seeing, I gave you 2 free signatures for free, and you just sold them on eBay for $85 a piece. Well,
Yeah.
I got to get my part. So you want my signature? You got to pay for it. And then some artists just stay normal. Some artists take it to the second level, which, like Liefeld, tries to really, gouge out. If you get McFarlane on a good day, he'll give you a couple autographs. If not, you're going to have to pay the McFarlane rate for the autographs. And
don't get me going on McFarlane.
No,
I've met McFarlane. I've met him on his first tour in Great Eastern Conventions, and his switch hitting. I'll sign however many books. Then it was 5. Then it was 2. Then it was 1. He kept changing things, and he made people angry. And I actually stopped somebody from punching him out at the show. So,
yeah, but see, that's the whole thing where the artist. It's funny because you mentioned that people get upset because they want to get their 25 books. You see, I know you guys go to a convention. These guys walking off these little parts, and they open up. They got stacks of books for whatever's hot. And like Stray Dogs, the artist for Stray Dogs was here, and the writer for Stray Dogs was here last year. And people are walking around with, a lot of these horror homage covers that they had. And they're laying 10, 15 books in front of the people. And the thing that gets me is they were nice enough to sign the stuff for you.
Yeah.
I stood there, and I'm watching people get all these signatures. And I watched 8 people get stacks of books signed, and only one said thank you. They took the books, they threw it in their box, and just walked away. Didn't even say thank you. And that's what rubs people the wrong way. You have all these entitled collectors who think, I don't have to do that because, you have to do this for me. Well, I don't have to give you money. Give me money. That's, I have a product that you want. You're going to pay for that product.
And people are doing that again, just like what I mentioned with the pops. They think that it's going to help it to retain a value too, because it's a lot of modern stuff that's getting signed. And I had this running gag I was doing. I did a short on it actually. I've got this copy of Spawn #1, and I said that it's the most valuable one because McFarlane hasn't signed it yet.
There you go.
But and sometimes at night I look out the back window and I can see him hiding in the woods back there, waiting for a chance to get in here and sign it for me.
Have pen will travel, right? I mean, it's going to get to the point where people go to conventions and be like, I'm looking for, this pop, but I need it unsigned. Oh, we don't have that. Now, that's like the chase grail now, is to find something that hasn't been signed by, the character who plays it on television or voices it over in the cartoons or, develop the character.
And like I said, some of it doesn't make sense. Like if you remember the one signing that was being done out here, it was the kid from the movie Gremlins, the little boy from Gremlins, but he's signing Gremlins pops, and it's like, you weren't the Gremlin.
Yeah, you were in the movie.
You were somebody else.
If they had a pop of you, I'll have you sign that. I mean, I see people signing stuff. I'm like, why are you getting them to sign that? It's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But again, it's a money grab. Everybody wants money, 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 money. That's all they want.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of trends going on? I mean, I know we've been talking and we talked about the signature. That's a trend. But any other trends going on in the industry?
I right now it's a downtime, and the most recent trend to me was everybody trying to get on the Comic Tom key collector app and seeing what the hot book is, and then you'll see lines at the comic book shop. They're all there for the same book. They're chasing the same books. I mean, the trend right now is, a lot of the stuff we talked about with the rainbow covers and, Nightwing, with his shirt off, things like that. That was a trend that was going on. Almost every week you'd had a different cover that had something like that. That was a trend. You're trying to go after a certain genre of individual. The companies don't seem to understand that. They've been in business this long because they have a fan base. A Batman collector doesn't want his Batman to change.
Mm-hmm.
He does, the Joker doesn't want Joker. Wonder Woman is Wonder Woman. Harley Quinn is Harley Quinn. And they have these characters that they try to adjust for the modern times, when in reality it really doesn't work that way. Get back to good stories. Good stories will pick you up and will show an uptick in sales. Good stories. There's a reason people are now going to the Bronze Age. If you go to shows, a lot of people buying Bronze Age books, 70s,
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
60s. Why? Because the stories are good.
Yeah.
There's a correlation to that. They're not buying the new stuff. You got to give the new stuff away. But the Bronze Age stuff from the 70s, that stuff is selling really good right now because the stories are really good.
Yeah, and that's a point that we've made several times. Just like, because we read a lot of the old books,
Mhm.
and as you follow along up to a certain point, the books all had a lot of dialogue, and now they just kind of don't. There's a lot of pictures. You can go pages without seeing any words, or maybe there's one or two words on the page.
Oh yeah.
I've had people make the argument that it's a graphic novel. It's like the art's telling the story. Well, the art's not that good. It was better then, when people were hand drawing the stuff.
You have good artists, and I think what happens is you have people our age. I'm 56. That remember the good art and the good storylines, and then I'll look at some stuff now, and they'll see these younger collectors. Look how great this art is. The art is garbage. Stick figures with a couple of little shadow streaks. That's not art. I mean, look, I know Peach Momoko is a very talented person. Her artwork doesn't do anything for me. I just don't see it and say, wow, that's a great piece. I've seen like maybe one or two covers of hers. I said, that's a really nice cover.
Mhm.
But the more covers that these artists come out, the lazier their art gets, because honestly, they're using digital. And if you go back to the old school stuff, when you look at, splash pages from books in like the 70s and 60s, and you'll look at like a beautiful 2-page art piece, that's art.
Mhm.
You can see it. I mean, a fight's a fight, back then. And, a lot of the war books, a lot of Sergeant Rock had really good, Our Army at War had really, really good artwork. Blitzkrieg had really good artwork, good story. And then like a lot of the 70s, House of Secrets, Tales of Suspense, good artwork. That's what they now call classic art. That's classic art. Okay, well, that's the art that I want. And the reason that stuff sells a lot now is because when you're a kid, you might not have the money for that, but when you're older, now you may have a little bit extra money where I can get that book that I want. I can buy that $300 or $400, pre-code book with a girl chained to the radiator because it's such a hard cover to find. Where
I remember that one.
when you remember that one, she's chained
Yeah.
to the radiator, and every time you see that book, it's gone just like that because it's so hard to find. You pay a big premium for that, and that's what we collect. So that's what I collect.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'll sell all the modern stuff. I'll just get rid of. I don't care. It's that pre-code stuff and that the Bronze Age horror. That's hard for me to get rid of.
I don't blame you. That's how you know you're a collector at heart. When it's hard to let the stuff go, because I have a hard time if I've got to sell something. It's like, I don't want to. Do I really want to? Do I really want to sell this? I don't know. Yeah, the big one right now is that stupid Spider Boy. Just waiting for that to crash and burn. And then, oh, by the way, folks, if you're into Spider Boy, look up Spidey Stories number 25 from the old Electric Company run, and you'll see a character that's pretty similar. But anyways, because I'd done like an anti-spec video not too long ago, because there's a handful of books out there that have been getting spec for over a decade or more, and they keep pushing it. Like Darkhawk is one of the ones I talked about in that one, and this is your next big hot. Let's push this so we can get rid of it, and then it'll tank later.
It'll tank. Darkhawk was a book you could pick up in a 25-cent bin for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're seeing people paying 40, 50, 60 bucks. I got my Darkhawk. Well, you know what? Good for you. That's a 25-cent book. That book is nothing. I don't think they've done a whole lot with that character. And I think it's one of those things where someone say, you know what? Let's pick a book that nobody wants and let's make it hot and see if people will jump on it. And that's kind of that's how I kind of took it that way when watching some of these bigger companies like, oh yeah, let's get this book, and that's a great book, and I got to get this. And No, give me a good story. Like I
Yeah,
tell people, don't collect what people want you to collect. Collect what you like.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it strictly for the money, you're doing it wrong. And I've said that all the time. If you're buying it because you want to buy the $5 book and turn it to $25, that's not why you collect. And that's why people have stopped collecting. That's why the market is saturated. That's why the market is down right now, because you're not collecting for the right reasons.
Well, you see a lot of videos and they talk about comic book as an investment.
Yeah.
Books to invest in now, keep it for 5 years. In 5 years, it should be here. And they have these graphs and these charts, and they worked out some kind of math system to tell you where this book should be in 5 and 10 years. And I'm like, is that enjoyable? Are you really a collector if that's your thought pattern? I'm buying this book, so in 5 years, I hope to triple my money or more. You know
and is it just me, or is it like 85% of the time it's a Marvel title?
People ask me all the time. I work in a casino. Where's the hot machine? If I knew that, I wouldn't be working. I say, people come up to me or they send me messages. Sell me a book that's going to triple in value in the next 3 years. Well, number one, I don't sell based off of all that. But what I do tell people when they ask me, what's a good investment? I'll tell you, you want a good investment? High keys, which will always go up, the X-Men, the Avengers, things like that. Pre-code, high-grade pre-code, horror. Pre-code bondage, 40s superhero books. So you don't have to just go Green Lantern, Batman, Green Llama. You can go Flash. You can do Wonder Woman, which is real popular. A lot of her early books are a lot of bondage cover books. And you know the story behind that? You know why they are?
What's that?
The person who developed Wonder Woman had a lot of bondage covers with the rope because him and his wife were into bondage. And he incorporated a personal life interest into a comic book. That's why a lot of those early things you see her tied up or tying somebody up with the rope, because that was him and his wife's thing. They liked that, and so they just incorporated it into the books.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like I said though, don't buy for money. Don't collect because you want to make money. Collect because you like it, because you get a book. If there's a book that I've been looking for and I find it, that enjoyment you get when you finally get that book, you can't pass that up. You can't surpass that. You know? And I see people just grabbing, I need a hot key. Do you have a key? It's like, no, I don't have keys. I don't carry keys. I carry high grade back issue books, is what I take to shows. And I do fine. Every time that someone goes to my show, there's someone at every one of the boxes I have. There's people standing behind them trying to get into those boxes. And that's okay. That's my niche, because I care about my books. You talked about bagging and boarding earlier when I did the video on that. I used to put 3 boards on a book. Now I do 2 because the cost. And people would laugh at me. You're wasting your money.
Hey, it's your money.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
But now if you go to shows, everybody's doing 2 and 3 bags or boards on their books to protect it. Because if you do go to shows, like I know a lot of you do, people don't take care of your stuff.
No.
They mash the books back down in the box. They just let them, lean up against to get. So my thing was, if I'm going to start doing shows, how do I protect my books? A 3rd board. I'll put 3 boards because it'll be harder to bend. And if the bag
I actually have
forward, they're not going to bend as much. I'm not going to get those spine ticks. Blue Splash is going after Superman comic books. Golden Age Superman comic books are the best investments because people love the old Golden Age superhero, books. Superman being, one of the big 3, of course. That's a good investment because if you get them in high grade, you pay the money for it. They're never going to go down. They constantly go up.
Because they're not making them anymore.
No.
But I've actually had a couple of people at the Atlanta Comic Con ask if I could do a video on like picker etiquette at a comic show because of how people abuse the long boxes that they set on the tables.
Horrible. On my boxes, I have top loader, and I put a piece of paper in there that says Bronze Age books. But on the bottom of every piece of paper, handle books with care. Period. And I've sent people away from my table. I'm one of those guys, if people who know me or, you know, been a fan of my thing, I don't need you. You need me. Because you're not going to find the books that I bring to shows at other tables. My stuff's high grade.
Sure.
And if you're not going to take care of my product, I'm not going to sell you my product. Because I don't sell the books because I have to make money. I enjoy doing shows. I enjoy meeting my viewers. I enjoy the community. It lets me hang out with some of my friends. But I don't do it because I got to make this money. I got to make this money. That's why I just do local shows. I'm not gonna spend a bunch of money. The show I do, the library show I do 3-4 times a year, is literally a half a mile away from my house. Throw the stuff in the truck, boom, throw my grates up, done, and then I have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do. And I'm not trying to make money, but people don't want. If you don't want to take care of the product, then I'm not going to have you ruin my product.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell you a $5 book, and then watch you destroy $30 worth of books. And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah. Your thoughts on CGC?
Oh Lord.
I did my first CGC when I first started doing. I did my first CGC video in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I was selling at that time there. CGC says that they have no financial interest, that they're a third party, they're all about making money. That's why they charge you so much to do the books.
Yeah.
And I would see the books would slide. The old days, you could shake the book and it'd click.
Yeah.
That's bad for the book. You can look at books now where if it's a high key, they're going to give you a stronger grade because they have a certain pay point where if you get an 8, it's going to cost you $250 to get to grade the book because it's a high end key. But if I give you a 7 or a 7.5, it's $100 to grade the book. So do you think they're not going to give somebody the extra half a grade to get the extra $150? Of course they are. And that's why you see a lot of key books that have spine ticks. The grading book they had, this monstrosity. They're look at our new grading book where it says a 9.9, a 9.9 can have spine ticks. A 9.8 can have 3 to 4 spine ticks. Really? That's not a 9.8 then. Because when CGC was going to start doing grading books, I remember talking to the person who developed it, the owner, and I asked him at a show. I said, "Explain to me your business model for this grading thing." Because if you look back in the old price guides, there was 3 grades. That's all there was. Now it's there wasn't. It was like I can't remember, but poor, fine, mint, or whatever. That was 3 grading standards. So you had your price point was in 3 different things. Now it's 8, 8, 5, 9, 9, 2, 9, 4, 9, 6, 9, 8, 9, 9. I mean, if you start seeing breakdowns like that, it's because it's a money step. And he would tell me 9.2 is the standard.
Mm-hmm.
That is the highest a book is graded is a 9.2. He said that's the way it is in the Overstreet. And if you look in the Overstreet, it's 9.2.
Yeah, it stops at 9.2 in the guide.
That is the highest graded point. And he said, every once in a while, you may see a 9.4. Every blue moon, maybe a 9.6. You're never going to see a 9.8. 9.9s are completely out of the question, and a 10 is just forget about it. So they started grading books when they were younger, and the grades were tough. Get a 9, 9.2. That was, I got a 9.2. I'm real happy. That's it's a mint book, and I'm so excited about that. But then people started complaining. All I ever get is a 9.2. Then they started giving 9.4s. Now they start giving 9.6s. How many times have you watched the video? Because a guy does his box break, and he's like, a 9.6. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're upset.
We've seen a lot of unboxings like that, and they pull them out, and they look heartbroken. And
Yeah.
I've seen people, in at shows, and they're going through the bin. Oh, I won't buy anything if it's not a 9.8. Mm-hmm. But also, I know because I'm into older books. There's stuff it's impossible.
See, it's funny.
You're not going to get it in a grade that high.
You're not. And it's funny you say that because years ago, a buddy of mine has a huge collection out of Los Angeles. Known him since we were kids. He calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, look, I know you have high grade EC books. I know you have extras of this particular book, and can you sell it to my friend? He's really looking for this book. What do you got it in grade?" I said, "I got it in an 8. I graded an 8. I'm a real tough grader, so my 8s are other people's 9.92s because that's just how it is." And so he came to see me, and I handed him the book, and he looked at it, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a really nice book, but it's only an 8. You graded it an 8." I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I only collect EC books that are 9.8s." And I said, "Then you have a 0 collection." And he looked at me. I said, "You have nothing in your collection then." Because even the file copies, the Gaines file copies that they found in his house as the publisher of EC were 9496. And those were ones that never seen the light of day. You don't see that stuff. And you're going to pay a fortune. You know, if the book in the price guide, the Overstreet says $100 for a 4.0, you're paying $500 for that book. Why? Because you don't find them. No one sells EC books at cost. Price guide. And the people who collect that, there you go.
I had pulled this up earlier. If there's a 9.8 in this, it better be $1 million. Because you can't even find this one.
You can't, because it's like the old Charlton Press stuff. Cheap paper.
Oh yeah.
Books are not meant to be collected. People didn't buy books in the 50s and say, "Hey, this is my future home." No, it folded up. They put it in their back pocket. I mean, look at the way comic book companies sent books to ones who had the subscriptions in the 70s. How did they send them? They folded them in half. They threw them in an envelope and mailed them to your house. That's where you get the subscription crease.
Yeah. Because
that's how they were sent, because they weren't there. People didn't sit there and say, "Yeah, that Werewolf by Night 32 is going to be a big book 40 years from now." I was buying Werewolf by Nights in 1980, and I was paying $1.50 for them. People didn't care about, Moon Knight, and they weren't looking at it like, "I want to make money like that." The books that held value at that time, early Batman, early X-Men, early Avengers, people wanted that. Those are the books that people knew when the market started ticking up a little bit. And again, the Golden Age stuff that we talked about, the pre-code horror and the pre-code Good Girl covers, or the Good Girl, bondage covers, that stuff didn't get popular until 2013, 2014. Then they started, "Oh, you know what? They're rare. Let me buy these now." All the speculators went, grabbed them all up. You see tons of them graded on back walls, asking exuberant prices, huge prices for them. And people are willing to pay them because they're that rare. But very seldom do you see, I can find, like we talked about, I can find 20, Amazing Spider-Man 300s in high grade, or X-Men #1, Avengers #1. I can find those all at every big booth. But try to find a certain EC covers, you're lucky to find one in that convention.
Yeah, and that's like, for those of you watching, some of the stuff we were showing each other earlier before we got started, things like this that you just can't find. That's rare. And it's not worth nearly as, not to most people. It's worth plenty to me because I know what it is. But to most people, they'd rather have an ASM 300. But there's a million of them out there. Look how many are graded on, because I guarantee you every copy that can be found has probably been graded if it's not already. Somebody's trying to, or stuff like this. You just don't find this kind of stuff in decent condition. It's really hard. Yeah, toy grading. I'll just squash that real quick. It is expensive, and there's a lot of question within the industry as to whether or not the company doing it is spot on honest about their practices. And I'll just leave that there for the toy grading.
Oh yeah. I'm not a big toy guy. I have a few toys, but nothing really big. And I don't understand encapsulating a toy. I don't understand encapsulating a ton of comic books. Another thing, the video games. I'm going to encapsulate a video game. I'm going to encapsulate a movie. The VHS tapes. They're
doing cassette tapes now.
I know.
Yeah,
they're doing everything. That's money grabs. I have this perfect movie here, but I don't get to watch it because I can't take it out. But like, these are some of the other things. Like, I get stuff like this graded, all grade. I know it's high grade, This is, you know, Living Vampire
Vampire,
9.6, Enters into Fear. I have that. I showed you the Hulk, you know, Wolverine.
Yeah.
I have one of my favorites, Dead of Night.
Oh
No,
yeah.
I have that.
Which is, you know, 9.6. Really, really good book there. And then if you're talking about hardcovers and stuff to find, here
And
is
a 9.6 is fantastic.
That's a great book. That's a very hard grade.
Yeah.
This is a 4, which for EC books, 4 is a high grade.
Yeah.
And then another one, this is unpressed, uncleaned. My friend was like, send it in and see what kind of grade you get. This is 1946. This is Crack Comics. That's a 8.5 from a book in 1946.
Wow.
That's
And
that
this is off-white to white pages. You know, which I think is really amazing. Now, like I've said, people, I'm not a big grading guy, but if you have pre-code books that you want to protect, then protect them and get them graded and spend the money on that, because then it's not going to deteriorate. You don't risk dropping it. You don't risk that stuff. And you can display them nicely. I mean, you know, you can hang it on your wall, you know, nice crime suspense stories. But these are the things like you couldn't do that. That's the comic code perfect right there. Got a dead body with a hatchet. He's going to cut it up. Now, this is 1954. This is at the height of the pre-code movement. And that's why, because, you know, parents are like, wait a minute, he's cutting up that body on a rack. Yeah, he's going to cut it up. He's going to chop it up and do whatever else he wants to it. But if you have books like that, then you can get them graded. I don't like the CGC. I have a friend who has a contract with CGC, so I get my books back in like 8 days, which is really good if I do that. I prefer CBCS. I think they have a better case. But CGC has so many people convinced that they are the true grading standard. That people believe that. And you have people who have invested so much money on graded books that they want you to believe that. They don't want you to say CBCS is a better grader. They're more accurate with their grades, and their case is more superior, which people have done tests on that. That, you know, these, oh no, it's got to be CGC. It's got to be CGC. And, you know, you're going to get less money if you do a CBCS or a CGC. Again, I'm not looking to flip it. I'm looking for accuracy and quality of case. And the quality of case, this is a CBCS case. The book never slides. It doesn't, you know, you don't hear it sliding and clicking. You do that to a CBC book, you're going to hear click, 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 because it's sliding and clicking. And that just damages your book over time, because that means there's a bunch of air in there, and that can cause damage to your books down the road. I don't want to, I use Mylar because I don't want to change my bags every 2 years because they get wavy. I'm real anal about that. I like clean presentation of books. But Mylar, you can just put it in there and put it up there. But again, everything's getting expensive. That's another thing that's hurting the industry. Is you used to be able to buy a pack of the boards I use, which is the BCW, modern age boards for the new books, extra wide, so it's got a little bit more space on the side to where you got more room for the book. You can buy those for $4.99, pack of 100, $5.99 pack of 100. Now they're $10.99 for a pack of 100. That's double the price. Used to be able to buy Mylar, $12, $10 for a pack of 50. Now it's, some places $24. It becomes a cost factor that people can't afford. And if you can't afford to protect your books, don't buy your books. It's just buying them and throwing them in boxes. I mean, it's going to damage yours. That's an investment. People don't understand that. If you're looking at this, that's, like buying a house and then not taking care of it. People spend, I would cringe if I knew how much money I spent on books since the first book I bought in 1974. I would probably pass out if you threw the cost factor on there. And there was a guy, it was a documentary I watched about Metropolis Comics, and they had a collector. Like, he comes in all the time and he's real particular about what he buys. If it's got the slightest little something on it, he doesn't buy it. And he buys the stuff, and they say he's been doing that for years. And he said in this interview, he said, I was wondering how much I spent, on comics in the last 20 years. And they gave me a printout of everything I've ever bought with a price. And he says, I could have purchased 2 homes.
Wow.
With the money I spent on comics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. All that stuff. I mean, what are you going to do, right?
Now you said something earlier, and I don't know if I misunderstood, so I'm just asking for clarity.
Mhm.
You said that when you send books to CGC, the year they price the book based on the year. I thought
They
the prices were set.
they
Like,
have a thing for high-end keys, like a walk-in service.
uh-huh.
Because if you have a Superman #1, you're not going to go send that book and mail it. You're going to physically go hand that book in. They have a service where if you have a big book like that, they will charge you a percentage of the fair market value for that book
Oh wow.
to grade it. It's not going to be. I can get a Werewolf by Night. I can get this graded for $70. If this is a Superman #1, it's going to cost me probably $5,000 to get it graded
Oh wow.
because they know the monies are going to be there and do that. And now you have pressers, people who do pressing and cleaning that are trying to piggyback on that concept, which is now you're basically telling me you're going to give me a higher grade because you want to get more money. So you're going to give me that extra bump on the grade. And, half a point grade on a modern book is nothing. Half a point grade on a high-end pre-Code War key book is thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
That's the difference between 10,000 and 20,000. So that's the difference between, $500 to grade it or $800 to grade it. Where do you think they're going to lean?
Yeah, that 800.
They're going to
And
lean.
CGC is the one that primarily does that, correct?
CGC does that. CBCS hasn't done that yet. I don't deal with the other company. What is that called? It's
PGX.
I don't deal with them
EGX.
because whenever a company does something like that, to me that's just shady.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're just looking for money now. You're basically telling me the more you pay us, the better your grade is going to be, which puts out a saturated market on undergraded or overgraded books. You're paying an 8.5 grade for a book that other people would grade 6.5 or 7 in raw condition. And people are so brainwashed this day and age
Mhm.
that CGC says this is what it is, then that's what it is. No, if you look at their price, their grading guide they came out with, they're all over the place on that. They don't even know what they're doing.
They're primarily, like I was pointing out, they're primarily the only grading company that does that.
They're the grading company that does that because Overstreet was the king for years. And I told people when the first Overstreet came out, I believe it was in 1970 when the first Overstreet price guide came out. They were the market. They were the king. Like if you're grading hobby cards, it's Beckett. Beckett is the standard of the price guide and the grading system. See, Overstreet was the same way. Overstreet came out with a really good grading guide, which is better than that because they showed pictures of every grade. They broke down the different aspects of every grade, why it grades that way, what you need to look for. And that's what everybody went by. Old school guys go by the Overstreet. New generation goes by whatever they can get away with. CGC says I can have 3 spine ticks on a 9.8. No, you can't. That's a near mint book. There should be very little nothing, but they came out with it.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you if you could highlight some of the inconsistencies in that.
Here is, I'm looking at the 9.8s. Let me try to find 9.8 here. I wasn't sure I was going to do this, but let's get this done. It was funny when I read it. I'm like, what? So they go like the Overstreet did, and they go with section 6 index of grades. They broke it all up, and so here is an index of a 9.8, and it says for most issues printed before 2000 and especially before 75, 9.8 is the highest grade that has ever been assigned. But it says here on a 9.8, they got their pictures. Of course, they're using the famous Hulk 181, and they're showing you things you can have. And it says right here, 2 small color breaking stress lines. Wear is beginning to show on the corner tip. And they're saying that's a 9.8. And it's right there in their black and white issue. If you go to 9.6, 3 or 4 small color breaking lines slight corner wear at the top of the spine. And that's a 9.6. Before that was nothing. If you go to the 9.9, near perfect, very slight wear top and bottom spine corners, and one small color breaking stress line mid spine. That's a 9.9. And they're saying you can have defects on a 9.9. 9.9 is an unheard of grade. And I think 10, they just said, you know, of course, a 10, razor sharp corners, perfect spine, no stress lines, no incidents of ink smear, miswrap, or faded colors. I mean, when I read this when I got it, I read it, and I was looking at this stuff here, and you're telling me that on a 9.8 you can have defects on a perfect book, because 9.8 was the quote unquote, and you know, they did, and the thing they're doing is, before they would give you grader's notes, well, you got a 9.6 because you had this, and this. They don't do that anymore. They just give you a grade. And another thing they're famous for, and this happened to a buddy of mine, we graded a beautiful World War II book. We graded an 8. Beautiful. Everything was sharp, tight. A couple little issues. Of course, the book was from 1942, I believe it was. And we were so excited to get it back. I graded it an 8. And you get the book back, and it's got a green certified grade on it. Because we sent it with them to get pressed, and they detached the cover. They didn't ask him, do you want a blue label with the grade? They just threw a qualified grade on it and said, here it is. They're giving you what they want to give you.
Oh.
He asked for a qualified grade. He wanted a blue label. That's what he wanted. And CGC's like, well, you know what? It had these issues with it, so we're just going to give you a certified grade. I don't want a certified grade. If you're making the mistake, don't give me a certified grade because you made the mistake. CGC doesn't agree and say, oh, we made that mistake. We did this, we did that. They don't say that. Well, it had to be detached when you sent it. It wasn't detached when we sent it. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll give you fair market value for that book, but we'll give you $50 for it. Well, in an 8.0, that book is $3,000, but you want to give me $50 for it, because you dislodged, you took away my spine and my cover, and them not giving you grader's notes, because I already know they're grading modern books. They'll get a modern book, and this is how they'll grade a modern book. They'll look at it and they'll be like, okay, yeah, looks good, back looks good, staples are attached, centerfold, 9.8, and that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. I proved that point, buddy. I told him, new books are the easiest to get grades on. And this is what I did to him. I sent books in off the shelf because they don't look. Something's Killing the Children, number 5. This is the really hard to find number 5, 9.8. 9.8. 6 print. The 6 print, which is impossible to find. But they said you'll never get a high grade on that. 9.8. Number 2, second printing. 9.8. This is Something Killing the Children, number 1, second print. 9.8. All sent in. I don't buy graded books. And then finally, third printing, which is a really popular cover because of that. 9.8. And the one I did send in that I was upset about was the impossible to find number 3, second print, and it was the same batch as these, and they were all the same. There was no issues with it. I got a 9.4 on it. That's the famous bathtub cover. And I got a 4 on it because you can see where they dropped it. They dropped it. They blunted one of the corners, and they gave me a 9.4. Because they don't care about your books. CGC doesn't care about your books. They never have. They never will. But people are so brainwashed about CGC. They, let them spend their money on them.
And I've seen a lot of horror stories with that too, with their pressing and cleaning service. And because it seems like everybody who has their book cleaned and pressed that does a video, they're like, hey, wait a minute. because something's wrong with it afterwards.
Yeah, something's
That
wrong
wasn't
with it.
before.
They drop it, they press it, they crack the spines. They did their famous ones where they detach either the cover or the centerfold, either one or both staples, because of the way they do it. I mean, there was that video. I don't know if you saw it. The CGC guy who was holding I think it was Superman #1, and the guy had the book in his hand and he was just flipping through it like this. It's a Superman #1. Remember that one?
Yeah,
That's
and
my
he
friend's
damaged
book.
it.
That's
Oh,
my friend's book. He took it to look at it, and they were just. You can hear him on video say, "What are you doing? You're gonna take?" He's just like flipping through real quick. It's like, really? That's how you're doing it? Just like people used to complain because I wear gloves. I wear tight latex gloves, no powder, when I go through the books. You can't wear that. It's going to ruin the book. No, the grease on your fingers ruins the book.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not wear gloves? I'm not talking loose gloves. I'm talking you can buy rubber gloves like a surgeon that are cheap, and it's like a hand, and it doesn't do anything to your book, except protect it from grease. But they don't want to do. They want to say, well, that's not good to do that. Yeah, but it's okay for you to grab that book and flip through the pages like a 2-year-old. That's a $250,000 book you're flipping through.
and if they're going to charge a premium for it, that they should slow down a little bit.
They don't slow down because they know they don't have to.
Yeah.
They don't have to because people are still going to go to CGC. Doesn't matter how they teach your books or what they say.
That's what Tony was saying from EGS is when we talked to him, he was like, what you do, what I do, cleaning and pressing, you're not going to get that from any grading service.
No,
that's not what they do. And so, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for a book to get damaged.
There is, because it sits. They get so many books in, it just sits there. And I've always said, if you want to do accurate grade, you want to be a true accurate grader, you shouldn't grade more than 10 to 15 books in a day. If you have the vintage books that you really got to go through and check the pages and tears and do an accurate grade, 10 to 15 books, because your eyes start getting tired.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, CGC graders are grading upwards of 100 books a day. So you're going to tell me that the first book they grade and the last book they grade is going to be of the same standard? No. Because they're flipping through so many books, they just want to be coming out like almost like a, what do you call that? No, I can't think of the name, but they just want you just grade the books.
Assembly line.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you get tired doing that. I grade a lot and I get tired grading books. So you can't tell me a guy who's got 100 books in front of him every day, 5 days a week, is not tired? No.
Yeah, you want to hurry up and get through it.
You want to get through it.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. And then the amount of time that they hold on to your books. I'm scared to send books in because I know the wait time. So I'm like, I don't want my book gone for 3 months plus.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's too long.
3 months. There was a time where CGC was so backed up, like pandemic time.
Yeah.
We look at stuff, and you would say your book would be sent in April. Your book will be available in June the following year.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? So you're holding my books for over a year, and you're going to guarantee the condition of that book is going to be the same that I sent it to you? You didn't do that to this book. You dropped it. And you cost a 9.8 in this book is super expensive. Now I'm happy with a 9.4. It's just a personal book, but I'm not happy with the fact that when I sent the other books in, this one was the best of all of them. And I saw the 9, I said, I'm going to get 9.4. And you look at the corner, they dropped it. They dropped the book. They don't care.
Yeah.
Because they know that for every person who tells them to kick rocks, they got 25 other people ready to send their books and take mine. Take mine. You can buy my books. Not me. I do things, like I said, if I get a nice pre-code book or something, or a really nice cover. But like I said, a lot of the books I showed, like these are all pre-code and they're not getting graded. I just keep them like this because, I can look at them and, I know that what they are.
That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate what that's come to, and I do grade. I do send stuff in to get graded, but it's usually something that I want to keep preserved.
Sure.
But I
That's
don't
what you
know.
want. You want to
Yeah.
preserve your books. You want to preserve your investment. If I'm spending, a few $100s on a pre-code book, why not? Like I used to tell people, if you're going to spend $100 a week on books, why would you not spend an extra $2 to add an extra board to
Yeah.
protect your investment?
Hmm.
Because I say it on my video all the time. I hate buying supplies. I don't like buying bags and boards. It's a necessary evil.
hmm
And I don't like, the only reason I send some books into CGC is because I have a friend who has a big contract and I can get my books back like that. And
As long as CGC doesn't know it's you.
oh, they don't like me. I got a cease and desist a long time ago from them.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I was telling people, hey, and the funny thing is when I was doing that in the mid, I was doing that 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I was just the bitter collector. You're old school, you don't like grading, and so you're just taking any opportunity you can to badmouth them, and shame on you, and they give me the little shame sign. But now
Yeah.
the same people, years ago when stuff starts coming, they're like, you know what, now I'm seeing what you're seeing. You don't have to agree with what I say, but ultimately you're going to realize, you know what, he was right, and these things are happening. The market goes up and down, and unfortunately, the things that happen with speculation, where I said that ultimately it's going to really hurt the industry. No, that's what's driving the industry. Well, then they stop buying. Now it hurts the industry. Wait, CGC dropped the book themselves. Damage that. Go ahead. Yes, you got that. You got that right, K Munich. Because I said, if you saw all the other books I just sent, all those other Something's Killing the Children's, they all came from the same batch, and there was nothing wrong with the first book. And you can see where it hit on the corner. And they just sent me another lower grade on it, but at least they didn't send me a qualified grade like they've done to so many people on books that they've really just destroyed. So I guess I should be happy about that.
That's unfortunate.
Now, do you think, because like you said, you have a friend that has a contract and they can get their books back in like a week. Do you think that friend get a higher grade than somebody else would because they have that contract? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Man,
and that's not their fault. Get the grade that they can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you talk about, Joe Blow, how many books do you send in?
Not that much.
Yeah, well, this individual I'm talking about, who's a very good friend, he's a great guy, but he gets back 2,000 books a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's money. But he's also doing shows, and he has the most amazing collection you've ever seen. That famous pre-code book where the girl's holding up the wine glass and half of her face is the skeleton.
Yeah.
Okay. He has like the 3 highest graded copies of that book.
Wow.
In existence, and they're like 9.6s, 9.8s.
Wow.
And
that's a nice
and they're so clean. And like I said, you can't. And I've always said this. I'm not saying that they're guaranteed higher grades, but you can't tell me that if I own a business, that I'm not going to take care of somebody a little bit, just a little bit, who spends $10,000 a month with me, or someone who sends in 2 books every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes Mile High, Metropolis, all these big companies. They all send books in. If you see companies that are sending huge books in, look at some of their keys and look at the situations with some of them, and you'll be like, man, you know what? This really isn't a book. Someone showed me a book at the last show, and I looked at it, and I was like, I would grade this like 3 grades lower because you can see all the damage on it. I said, but good for you. It's good for you that you're getting that book, because now you can sell it for the 7th grade because, the great CGC says that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't look at the book. They look at the grade.
Yeah.
Because when you get a book, very few people get a book in their hand from CGC and say, oh my God, I got a 9.6. I got a 9.8. But I do have friends that are collectors who say, how did this get that grade? Because they'll write down what they think their grades are going to be. And then they start looking at it like, well, God, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this on the back. I mean, how did that happen? You know, you look at that. I don't know how that happened. There's, you know, there was a guy who did a video. And he's like, I sent this book. I can't remember the book. He's a good guy. He was sending books, and he's all doing a CGC unboxing. He's real happy about it. And he's like, I sent this book in, and I am hoping for a 7.0 on this book. I hope I get a 7.4. Took it out of the box. It was 9.8. And he's on his video like, how did this happen? And he's looking at it. How did this happen? Because he thought it was going to be a 7.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the damage with it. And it's, you know, did it get mislabeled? Also, I had some of these books that Something's Killing the Children, as I sent in, I had to send back because they put the wrong labels on them.
And I've heard of that happening, or books being in there upside down. Or
Yeah.
One guy got a sticky note in there.
Yeah, we got a sticky note, and they pride themselves, you know, our grading standards are the best. No book, it's a 3-person check. We encapsulate it, we double check it, we triple check it before we send it to you. Well, if you're triple checking, how's my book upside down? How's the label wrong? Because they're not doing that process. Guy grades it, this is what the grade is, boom, done, and put it out there. Because we've got so many books coming in, they don't have time to do that. And they make those comments, and they make those statements, and then they can't do it because of that. Jeff McLuey, I thought McIlwee. I'm butchering your name, dude. I'm really sorry. So I'll just call you Jeff. I'll just call you Jeff. I love the little pirate patch on your picture. It's not you specifically, but I just like the little thing like that. The difference between qualified and certified. Qualified grade. When you get a certified signature, it'll say certified on it. Let's see. Do I have that? Do I even have that? I don't have that book here right now. It'll say certified, means that it's been certified, authentic. You know, CGC doesn't do that. CBCS does do that. You can get a book that has a signature. If you look at CGC, they will never. They'll give you a grade, and then under the grade on the label, right here, it'll say, like, if you had McFarlane on it, someone wrote name in black ink on cover. That's what they'll say.
Yeah.
Or CBCS, like, signed by Todd McFarlane, because they actually have people who verify signatures that will look at a signature and say, that is a signature. That's an authentic signature. It will certify the signature. That's a certified signature. A qualified grade is, I send a book in that's going to be a 9.8. Like a Something's Killing the Children, and they detach the cover, or they damage the book. Instead of giving me a blue label, 5.0, which the book would be if they damaged it like that, they will put down qualified grade 9.8. And what that means is, if there was no damage on the book, it would have been a 9.8, which is the biggest scam in the world, because there is something wrong with the book. So it's not a 9.8. So it'll be a green label book, and a green label, and it'll say qualified grade. And you can look up on eBay qualified grade, and it'll say qualified 9.0. But then you look at the label, it'll be like centerfold detached, coupon cut. That's another big one for the Hulk 181 fans out there.
Marvel value stamp.
Marvel value stamp. They just came out with a great book on that. Have you seen that new book, The History of the Marvel Value Stamp?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, brand new, just came out. I got mine coming in. It's a really, really nice hardcover book, and it shows every Marvel value stamp they ever came out with, and they redid the page of the comic that the value stamp was on.
That's interesting.
It's a great book, because I was horrified to see when I talk about the Marvel value stamps, because I'll put on the back of my books in the 70s, if it's got a Marvel value stamp 7, whatever, Green Lantern.
Yeah.
What's the Marvel value stamp? A lot of people don't know what the Marvel value stamp is. They don't realize that, if you have a perfect condition Hulk 181 and you open that book and that Marvel value stamp is gone, that is a incomplete book. It now becomes an incomplete book. But now I'm hearing, because of the complaints that people had, where they always talked about subscription crease. If it's a subscription crease, that's a 4.0 if it's in really good condition, no matter what the rest of the book looks like, because it's got a crease right down the middle.
Yeah.
But they allow big stamps, so date stamps on the cover of the book, and they'll take away from it. To me, the date stamps uglier than the subscription crease, because some of those subscription creases are so light you can see where it is.
Yeah.
But big date stamp on the middle of the book, I hate that. Now there's a rumor going out that CGC is going to say, you know what? Because date stamps were just part of what it was. The subscription crease is part of what it was, and people cut out the Marvel value stamps. We don't really want to take away from that. We're not going to. We're not going to punish the book as much.
I don't mind a stamp too much. Like we go back to this one again, like in the P there.
Yeah,
there's a date stamp, and it's something simple like that. A little bit of history to the book. I don't mind that.
Sure.
As long as it's not obstructing the art, it doesn't bother me. But something actually missing from the book is a whole different.
It's a different thing, and I agree as it relates to if you have like a little stamp on the book, little date stamp. You know, they get them into their drugstores or their newsstands, and they date the stamp date to make sure they can get their money back when they send them back. But to sit there now and say, you know, the subscription crease now that we've been knocking people on all these years, or now it's not going to be as big of a deal because it was a common occurrence back in the 70s to do that. I don't agree with that. There was a great example of a book from World War II. It was a war book, and it was a shoe store. And on the bottom portion of the book, like here, it was a sticker that went all the way across and down. And what it was it was a war bonds story. And it says, buy U.S. war bonds and support our troops in the battle against tyranny in Europe. Now, to me, that shouldn't take anything away from the book. That's historical value to me. To me. And they were saying, no, that's a big sticker. It takes away from the book. Well, now they're saying, well, you know what? That does have some historical value. So maybe it is just something that happens because, again, it talks about the war. It's a World War II era book, heart of World War II, and it's a World War II war bonds sticker asking you to support, you know, the fight of tyranny, you know, in Europe. And to me, if I have a war book and I have that sticker on there, that to me, that just makes it that much better because there's a historical value there for that. That I absolutely love. But they change as the market. So how are they going to help their market?
But now you got to resubmit your books.
You're going to have to resubmit the books.
So that you can
like
get it properly.
The biggest argument. What is Wolverine's first appearance? 181 or 180? Oh,
no.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, they say it's a cameo. It's a cameo, but he says something. He's saying something on the last page. Wolverine.
Yeah.
Why?
If he can be identified.
That's the first appearance.
It's the first appearance.
No, that's the second appearance. He's on the back of the book in the story. I'm Wolverine. That's the first appearance. I don't understand that. See, that they do that based off because they know they've been saying that 181 is the first appearance for all these years. If they backtrack and say 180 is the actual first appearance, all those people who bought the books being the first appearance can go back and now sue CGC because CGC told them 181 is the first appearance. So people can sit there and say, I spent $50,000 on first appearance books based off what this company said, and now they're saying it's not it, and I'm losing that money. CGC can be liable for that, and they do. That's why they fight so hard to say 181 is the true first appearance.
That's interesting.
I got a million of them.
Hey, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
So how long have you been a dealer?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I always collected, but I collected older stuff. I didn't buy the new stuff. I started buying new stuff. Actually, I had a niece who was living with us back in, you know, the late 2000s, and I wanted her to get into something. And so I decided, let's go to a comic book store. And she started picking up books that she liked, stories that she liked. And it kind of got me into buying some more recent books. And then I started the YouTube channel, and I was doing like a weekly, you know, my new pickups for the week. And I'd show all the books I did, and I started doing that. And then in around 2013, I did I had an indoor swap meet shop because people would say, you got so many nice books. You know, there was a market for my thing wasn't key books. It was high grade filler books. You can find the 181 in high grade, but can you find the 182? Can you find the 179? Can you find those? No, you can't find those. Can you find that, pre-code, not pre-code, but the 70s horror high grade? Can you find that in high grade? Not the keys, but not the number ones, but how about the 8, 9, 10s? And there was a lot of really good storylines out there. Planet of the Apes, one of my favorites. The Monster Frankenstein from the 70s. That stuff was dirt cheap just until recently. Howard the Duck is another one. I love Howard the Duck. And you can find those books. You can find them in high grade for practically nothing. I would go to conventions and buy 9.6, 9.8 raw of, Planet of the Apes, Howard the Duck, $1 a piece. I'm glad to get rid of them. Absolutely. I just put them away. And now, high grades go for big money. That's what I wanted to do. And so I started doing that, and I had a really good customer base. People would come for all the back issues. I wasn't supplying new books. It was all back issue books. And people would come, they being in Vegas where, a lot of other people come to town, and I'd be surprised. Every week I'd have people, hey, I watch your videos. I'm from Tennessee. And first stop I made was right here because I knew you had books I want. And people would walk out with $1,000 worth of books, because they were buying high grade stuff. They'd look at it. I remember there was a customer haggling over a book, and another guy came in from Texas, and he just bought a mountain of books. And the guy was haggling the price. I said, "This is the price." And the guy was like, "Well, I'll think about it." And so the guy from Texas is like, "If you're not going to buy them now, I'll buy them." Well, I'm trying to get a better price. If you don't know these prices are good, then you have no idea what's going on. And that's my niche at the conventions. I do now, which is you're not going to find the highest quality books at the prices I'm selling them at. You're not going to do that because I'm not trying to gouge you. Because I'm not doing this to pay bills. I'm doing this because I like it. I know what I paid for it. If I bought this book for $100 raw, and I sell it for $500, which I've been offered because you can't find them, I'm not selling it. But to me, that's like, okay, 100 for the book, 70 for the grading. I'm making over $300 profit. That's a good profit. You can't make the fortune on every book, but I started doing that and was very happy with what I was doing. I was able to find a bunch of collections that I could buy, that I was real happy with. A lot of 70s stuff that had just been in boxes for years and years and years, and it really built up an inventory. I mean, I think I showed you my mountain of books behind me. You can kind of see, but these drawer boxes go from ground to ceiling, and they are 2, 4, 10 across. So it's a lot of books, and that's just what I have in the house. It doesn't matter what I have. I have stuff in storage, and I have a storage unit full of books, and it's got a lot of books. I got a lot of books.
How many books do you think you have
right now? Minus private collection. It's the Planet of the Apes, the comic book.
So the Adventures on the Planet of the Apes title?
There was one they did for the movies, Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
And they also had the magazine, gentlemen, the nostalgic pod blast talking about the magazines. The magazines are some of my favorites as well, because I like to buy stuff like that as well. But I probably have close to 95,000 books.
Oh, wow.
But then I have things like this. Like here's an early Swamp Thing on Monsters Unleashed.
Oh,
wow. Yeah.
And then here's from the TV show Emergency.
Oh, they had a book?
They had a book. You know who did that cover?
No.
Neil Adams.
Oh.
That's early Neil Adams. This is one of my favorites right here.
Oh, that is nice.
Now, these are books that you can find. I mean, again, I collect stuff like that because I like it.
There you go. Give me that.
I collect stuff like that because I love the covers, and they're cheap. Those books don't cost but $3 or $4 a piece. And they're upper grade books. When I say upper grade, I'm talking anything above 6.5 and above. To me, for especially vintage stuff, 70s and earlier is upper grade to me. That's what I consider upper grade, because there's some things you're not going to find. Don't come to me and try to, I showed you that 8.5 crack comics. That's unheard of for a book in the 40s, especially one that has not been pressed or cleaned yet. So if I crack that out and I got it pressed and cleaned professionally and sent it in, does it come back a 9.4? Does it come back, a 9? a half bump grade on a book like that, a pre-code book, that's a lot of money, but I'm happy where they're at right now. But I have about 80 to 90,000 books, and I never have time to go through it. I work so much. I'm a baseball coach. I do things like that as well, and so. But I will be doing shows all year. Then I'm going to have my big garage sale, probably at the second half of this year, because my wife and I just redid our kitchen, and so that was her thing. I want to do the kitchen. It's like, okay, so she redid that, but when you tear things out, it's got to go somewhere. And unfortunately, I went in the garage where I have my Arkham garage sale, and I can't do that right now until all that gets cleaned up. I don't insure them. A lot of companies won't insure books. I think his name was Greg. You don't insure books like that. A lot of them won't do it because the volatility, the up and down of the prices. There's not a specific price. If you have a 5-carat diamond ring and it's X amount of money, you know if that's what it is. Comic books go up and down all the time, just like baseball cards. There are some independent companies out there they say they will grade your collectibles collection, but when it comes time to try to get them, you got to jump through a lot of hoops. So they really don't do it. All you do is you can add a little bit of money to your home insurance. If you lose something, you're going to get some, but you're never going to get the value. If there was I'm not going to say comic insurance is a scam, but they have to work within the guidelines that they have. A lot of companies, a lot of the bigger companies won't insure the books because, again, they can't pinpoint a price. I say this book will sell for $500 at a show because it's a 4.0 EC horror comic. But they're going to look at the price guide and say, okay, well, the price guide says a 4.0 is only $100, but we can only insure X amount on that. So you're not going to get the full value. If I'm not going to get full value on it, I'll just add something to my home insurance. And they can do a little bit of that. They bulk it with personal items. It's called personal items. And they'll give you X amount on a window for personal items. But they won't sit there and say, I have 90,000 books at $2 a piece. It should be $250,000 on insurance. They're not going to do that. So I don't do that. It's not so much it's a scam. It's just most companies won't grade them out like that. And the ones that do grade them are the ones that do take the insurance for it. I knew somebody who lost his home in a fire. No, not fire, excuse me. It was a flood in Louisiana when they had the hurricane down there, and it flooded out his comic book room. And it took him like a year and a half, and he got like $1,000 what they gave him. So that's all we can do with your insurance policy. And so to me, it's worth it to do all that. So no, you don't insure them. You put something on the home insurance, and hopefully that day never comes.
Yeah.
And if it does, if there was a fire that destroyed my home, comics are the last thing on my mind. It's getting my home back and making sure everything else is okay. Because there's other things that are more important, family pictures and things like that. But my wife is real good at that because I had all these hard copy pictures, and she was able to scan them in and download them on flash drives. And the flash drives were at a bank. So if something happens in the house, we still have the original family pictures. My history goes back a long time. So, that means a lot. But again, I have a huge, I collect a few records. I have a ton of movies. If something happened, I'd lose a lot of stuff, not just the comics. So
yeah,
no drinks there. Get away.
No, but yeah, we feel you on that one.
Yeah.
You have a ton of stuff in your background. You got a great collection back there. So you would have the same heavy heart if you came home and your house was flooded or something to be like,
Yeah. Because like you, we do, we do toys, comics, records, all kinds of stuff. And, we looked into the insurance, and you get the whole rigmarole. So we just did more on the homeowner's insurance.
Yeah. And that's what you do because you get that runaround.
Yeah.
Do you hang records? Do you hang records on your wall?
No, we listen to them. We have a few on the wall that are doubles, but just a few. But
I don't know if
they're just in a.
I got in the back.
Wow.
I got like The Fog, Return of the Living Dead, Iron Maiden, My Bloody Valentine, of course, the famous Who Quadrophenia. So I do that. My wife found those, and we hang them up, and she's like, "Oh, add something to the back of your, the background." So,
Yeah, we're all in nostalgia. So
yeah,
anything that brings us back, including the vinyl records. Vinyl records is a big one.
Yeah.
we grew up. I mean, I grew up 70s and early. I graduated in 86 and 70s and 80s. And I tell people, I feel that I grew up in the best era. You could actually go to a mall and it was a mall. You can actually go to a record store and it was a record store.
Yeah.
And, you know, go to the 7-Eleven and buy books off the spinner rack, or the old collector cups. Remember the old collector cups had like a superhero on it?
Oh yeah.
So you buy your quarter Slurpee and then you get, you know, you get your collector cup, and they did that for all that stuff. And, you know, I just, you think about it and you think about how happy you are, and then you miss those times where you look back and say, man, you know, it was so easy back then. You get up on a Saturday, you watch cartoons, and then you hang out with your friends and ride your bikes and play Little League and eat churros at the, you know, Little League field. That's how it was.
Well, there was I think that was the pinnacle in right through the 80s, and then it started to slide. And I've quoted him before, Rob Van Winkle, you know, Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
He was quoted as saying, I think it was 2002. He says the last culturally significant thing to happen in human history was in 2002 with the invention of the iPod, and nothing has really happened since. And he was making the point that he doesn't know what these kids coming up now are going to have for nostalgia.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You're not going to have anything. I can think back Saturday morning cartoons, 70s TV shows, SWAT, Vegas, Charlie's Angels, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. I can name Planet of the Apes, which is a show I absolutely loved. You know,
the live action?
Huh?
Yeah, the live action show?
Yeah, it was a live action TV show.
Yeah, we've seen it. It's actually pretty good.
I like that. I remember I was at Best Buy. We were doing something at Best Buy, and they had on the shelf in Blu-ray Planet of the Apes, the complete television series, was like $9. And
yeah.
I had to borrow. I was like, "Why do you want that?" I was like, "Why wouldn't you want that for $9?" Just like when that movie Land of the Lost came out. I remember the TV show Land of the Lost. Sid and Marty Krofft did the live action Land of the Lost with the sleeve stack.
Terrible. Yeah.
The movie was terrible. I found the complete television series. I bought it. It was like $19 for all the seasons. I watched it, and I used to love that as a kid. I couldn't wait for it. And I'm watching it as an adult. I'm like, what a piece of crap, man. This is the worst show ever. And I absolutely love it because, you know, the sleeve stacks and remember the old Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched
Cylons, or what they would say, by your command.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking nostalgia. We were out to a restaurant, and we're sitting in the waiting room, and it's a fancy restaurant. And the gentleman next to us was his wife, and we're about the same age. And his phone went off for like a text message, and it was the Cylons, by your command. And I said, "That's amazing." And he looked at his wife. I told you someone would recognize it. It's like he was so happy that someone recognizes by your command. You know, I absolutely love that stuff. And if you don't have good memories to keep you going or to give you excited about something, what do you really have? And this new generation, that they just don't. I don't think they have that. Everything is cell phones and, like you said, iPods. And, you know, I wanted to make a mixtape. I had to sit by the radio with my tape player next to the speaker and push play when the tape came in, you know, when the song came on. That's how I did it. I just couldn't, you know, download, hey, here we go. I'm going to get this song and this song. You had to go buy the 45s or whatever, but that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it memorable. Because you remember going out with your friends, hanging out at the record store, you know, going to the malls, doing the things that you did as a kid, riding your bikes. And that was just fun. It was a simpler time. I never worried about anybody snatching us up. You know, you left in the morning, you came back when the street lights went on. And it's amazing that they talk about that, but that was across the country. Everybody said, I got to be on by the street lights. You know?
Yeah, that's like a universal thing, because I thought it was in my area. Then you hear other people, David's from Boston, you're from California. It's a
everybody does it.
Signal to come home.
And the thing that I always liked was everybody's so hung up on race. Back in the day, you could take a kid and you can drop him off in any neighborhood, regardless of color. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to find kids to play with, and they're all going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
They didn't sit there and say, I can't talk to you because of, you know, XYZ. It was a kid that was your age. You're playing hide and seek. Let's play hide and seek. Let's play dodgeball. Whatever we were playing. Come on in. More the merrier. And I think social media has ruined a lot of that.
Yeah.
And adults projecting. They put that on them. They grow up too soon.
I ignore that aspect. I ignore that because I don't bring that negativity in there. But I feel sorry for the generation now because they don't give themselves an opportunity to be successful,
Yeah.
and that's sad to me. Collect comics, fun.
Yeah.
Buy a toy, do something. Do something.
Uh, um. So we talk. Well, we know your favorite era of collecting because we were going to ask your favorite era of comics, but
Yeah,
we kind of
if you're picking, what are you going to gravitate towards?
you're going
the
to
most?
gravitate toward pre-code horror or horror in general.
Pre-code horror, 70s horror, Bronze Age horror. Right? If you say that's all you can collect the rest of your life, I'm happy as a clam, because so much stuff falls in that. Even war comics at that time, Weird War. Have you read Weird War Tales?
I collect Weird War.
Yeah, and so that's got great stories. Weird War. You can find. I like collecting kind of the offbeat Black Lightning. I love the Black Lightning storyline. I love that. Like I said, Howard the Duck. I love Howard the Duck. All 70s stuff. What was the one that was? Can't think of it. I can't think of it. It was a 70s book. Her first appearance is in a Shazam book. She's like ISIS. ISIS. I used to love ISIS, and they had a takeoff on ISIS. You remember a 70s live action show, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl?
Yeah.
Electro Woman and Dinah Girl. Yeah,
Sid and Marty Krofft.
Sid and Marty Krofft. They did all HR Puffin stuff. Witchy Poo, down there. Lidsville.
And of course, Land of the Lost was their one dramatic show because all the rest of them were humor.
Yeah, they're all humor except, one of my favorites. Remember Sigmund the Sea Monster?
Oh, yeah.
I love Sigmund the Sea Monster.
Sigmund is funny.
It's Johnny Whitaker, who was on Family Affair, the redheaded kid. He was in Sigmund the Sea Monster, and just great stuff, But I always like that show Family Affair from the 60s. Like, who named these kids? Buffy, Sissy, and Jody. I mean, come on now. What kind of, Jody was the kid, was the man, was the guy. Sissy, the older sister. I'm like, really? That's a Buffy, Sissy, and Jody. It's like, come on now. Get some names here.
But yeah, that was some great stuff. What Saturday morning, they don't do that anymore.
No.
But we still, we primarily watch vintage programming. We don't watch very much modern programming at all. So we have our discs, and we watch like 1 or 2 episodes a week of a certain shows, and we stretch it out like that. But yeah, we a lot of the modern stuff doesn't appeal to us.
Yeah.
I there's a few modern shows that I like. Not a ton. I like things like Modern Family. I like Big Bang Theory. I'd watch that. But my wife and I, one of our favorite shows is a 50s show, Gunsmoke. Remember Gunsmoke?
Oh, we're watching Gunsmoke now. We have the complete series on DVD. So
all
we watch
20
it on
seasons.
we watch it on Mondays.
It's 20 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 years. And my wife loves Miss Kitty and Doc, and early episodes of Chester before the other ones.
Yeah.
But we watch every night when we're home together. We'll watch 1 or 2 episodes of Gunsmoke before we go to sleep. And we've seen these episodes, 50 times each, but they never get old.
Yeah.
Matt Dillon's just a straight killer. He kills somebody like every episode. And the thing that makes us laugh is when he shoots somebody in the bar, the person falls on the ground, and then he always says, let's get a drink at the bar. And then they just leave the guy sitting there. He's dead. They just have a drink at the bar. The guy's just laying there.
Or he leaves.
Or he leaves.
Chester, can you have somebody pick him up?
Help you guys help Chester, and a couple guys jump in, and we like to spot the background actors, the ones because they use the same actors. You can notice even on some of a lot of the same female actors did different characters in the different seasons.
Oh yeah,
they did. But there is an old man who's got the weirdest look, and he wears a little derby hat. And you can see him in the bar at one episode, and then he's out by the stagecoach, or he's walking in the store. Same old guy. And he's just like a little bit player, but we always like, hey, there he is. And I'll pause it, and she's like, there he is. It's like, it's like our favorite background extra.
and then they'll throw you sometimes. Like we were watching one the other night, Lee Van Cleef was in it, and he had like a bit, and he was barely in it. And Lee Van Cleef was big at that time.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what, yeah, they could have given him a more serious part. He barely spoke.
They had the one where like there was a girl that they saved from 2 buffalo hunters. Well, one of the buffalo hunters was Jack Klugman.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course
I don't think we got to that yet.
Early Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, Burt Reynolds was in it for
Charles
a while.
Thompson was on a couple of seasons of Gunsmoke. And you'll see these people like that's a bigger person. I remember there's one. It was like a romantic one where a guy and a girl were going to run away together, and it was one of the very first things Barbara Eden ever did before Jeannie. She's like 17 years old doing this Gunsmoke episode, and my wife's like, "I'm like, that's Jeannie. Come on, that's that's Jeannie right there." But they used a lot, just like The Rifleman was another show from that time.
Yeah,
same thing. Big actors would go in there, and before they were big. I mean, if you have a thing, watch the prequel to the first episode of Gunsmoke. John Wayne does the introduction.
Yeah, he does.
He does the introduction, and they actually wanted him to be Matt Dillon, but he didn't want to do television. So they gave it to his friend, my friend, Matt Dillon, not Matt Dillon, but James Arness. He calls him Jim Arness. My friend Jim Arness. And the thing that kills me is James Arness was like 6'6". He's a huge dude.
Yeah, he's big.
Yeah, and there's an episode called Never Pester Chester, where Chester gets drugged by a horse by these 2 ranchers.
Oh,
and
wow.
The one actor who plays the protagonist is a guy named Slobo was the guy's name in the show, Slobo from Texas, Texan. He's like 3 inches taller than James Arness. He is just an absolute mountain of a man. And I'm like, my God, look at the size of that guy. Even in the show, they're talking to his boss, and he's like, you can do what you want, Marshall, if you can go get him. But remember, he's bigger than you are. It's like he was like these huge shoulders and just a mountain of a man. But I could watch those shows all day. But same as you, we watch a lot of shows that we like. A lot of them from the 70s, Three's Company, things like that I love Three's Company, stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions?
Anyway, we'll run it over again here. Where can people find you?
YouTube is the best thing to get a hold of me. Arkham Comics Las Vegas. You're going to see that Joker right there on the box up the top. That is my main channel, and I'm going to start doing videos again. I haven't done videos in a few weeks because, like I said, sometimes life happens, and but I'm going to get back into it this week and start doing my weekly videos and where we talk about new releases, basically the stuff we talked about here, just things that bring good memories to me. And if someone upsets me, then I'll talk about that as well. So way it works.
Yeah, because how do you close out?
If you don't like it, nothing I can do for you. Have a great night.
There you go.
That's how it works out.
And we're at about the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and wrap that up. And thank you very much, Daniel, for
thank you. No, thank you. It was a great time, and hopefully we can do this again down the road. And to all the people who checked in, thank you for the great questions and happy viewing. And hope to see you on my channel. And I will see you real soon. You guys have a great night. Thanks again.
Okay.
All right, and thank you.
All right.
Kicked off.